This is Beyond the Bell Tower, where an elite group of North Carolina State University students give us a behind-the-scenes look at their steps to success and show us how they attain even their lofty goals. These students, who are in the top 10% of the country, are active in student support services at NC State, a nationally recognized program designed to provide support for low-income, first-generation college students. Nationally, this population has an 11% graduation rate within 6 years. The Student Support Services students surpass that rate each year and go on to become doctors, dentists, accountants, and engineers. They work at Google, Apple, and the NCAA. They have earned PhDs in Ivy League colleges. These students go well beyond the bell tower to reach this level of success.
Welcome to Beyond the Bell Tower, the podcast for TRIO students by TRIO students. And today it's so exciting that we have Abriana Johnson, who is an alum of TRIO. And just recently she had a major life experience or transition, a major life event where she was able to quit her day job and work full-time on a business that she actually started. And so she's going to talk about a couple of things, and we have a lot of time where it is going to be like we'll talk into two parts of your academic experience at NC State and your experience kind of before some of the major accomplishments. There's a lot of details and advice and information you're able to offer students about, like, how would you start your own business, be able to work at it full time, being 25, 26?
I'm 27.
27! You look 22.
Oh, thanks, girl.
But that's the piece is under 30. I mean, that's just amazing. And it's not that, which we'll talk a little bit about, but I'm assuming it's not because your parents gave you $1 million loan as other people, or you grew up with a family that had their independent businesses, and so you lived around that culture and knew like what to do and had there to assist you. If you want to introduce yourself, to share to the TRIO students who you are, what's important about you, what you want them to know.
Yeah. So hi, everybody. My name is Abriana Johnson, and I graduated from NC State in 2014. I received my bachelor's of science in animal science. Came through NC State as a pre-veterinary student. I still say that I'm a pre-vet student of life because I still appreciate veterinary medicine so very much, and vet school is still on my bucket list, but is a little bit lower on the priority list right now. I am one of the co-hosts and creators of Young Black Equestrians, the podcast. So this podcasting thing is my jam. And I have authored and illustrated 2 children's books in a book series called Cowgirl Cameron. And I, like Sarah alluded to, started my business, Black Unicorn Creative, earlier this year. I'll go into that more of that a little bit later on, but I quit my job at the end of August and pursued my business full time.
And this is your second business, correct? Or
it's not technically my second business. I kind of just did a pivot under the same name. So I started off doing like crafty things, cutting vinyl and, customizing things using the name Black Unicorn Creative. But then I realized I wanted to do that stuff for fun. I didn't want to do it because people were asking me to do it. So I kind of held on to the name. And then once I kind of got into the business world and the horse industry business.
Yeah, I was thinking about the one where you did the volunteer vets came on the trail rides.
Oh yeah, no, that wasn't a business. That was me trying to get into vet school.
So that was more volunteering.
Yeah.
Okay. So it could have been a business. It could have been a nonprofit.
It definitely could have. I don't know. I didn't know that it could have been that during the time. But I recently had a veterinarian say, "Hey, I would be interested in doing that," and I was like, "Oh God, lady, I have too much to do right now. do not put that bug in my ear because you know I will make stuff happen." Like,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, they could start the business and then they could pay you as a consultant. So,
exactly. I would. That's my ultimate job is to just get paid to tell people what to do.
Well, I already say that's my part-time job. If and I'm sure it would be endorsed on LinkedIn by several people if that were an option
Yeah.
to do, and telling people what to do unsolicited. So, but I do want to start kind of talking about who you are as a person and on your business, kind of like, which seems one of your missions of Black Unicorn Creative is you have the questions like what makes you tick? Why do you get up every morning? That you will help you discern what is and is not for you. Can you answer those questions?
Yeah. So I realized when taking the leap, as people like to say, that a lot of the holdup or the setbacks or the reluctance for people to start their own business is their mindset. So it was very important to me, especially as someone who was leaving the veterinary or not, well, yeah, leaving the veterinary profession. I have to catch myself because it's okay. It's okay to leave the profession that you've literally been working towards since I was 7. I have a piece of paper framed, some artwork, and you know those papers when you were little, like the top of it was blank and the bottom had those big old lines and in the middle had the dashed lines like to help you learn how to write. I have a paper like that that says I want to travel the world like a vet in a Jeep and help animals and travel the world all over. Like I said that at 7. So it was hard for me to kind of pivot and get out of that track that I was in for however 20 years.
That's like your identity.
It became my identity. Right. And as a pre-veterinary student, that's what they tell you. They say you've got to focus on this. You've got to keep your eye on the prize. If you don't do all of these checkbox things, you will not get into vet school. And I came to realize like that's not the end all be all. And that was like a revelation for me. Like I can do other things.
Vet school, there's what, only 24 vet schools or 26 vet schools?
Mm-hmm.
And so they do say it is much more competitive than medical school.
It is, yeah. And I only applied one time. I applied to 3 schools and was put on the wait list for one and didn't get into any of them. So that rejection also was like, oh my gosh, this is not meant for me. Like I'm gonna do all of these things to make my application so much better. But it was in doing those things that I realized how much I am capable of outside of one, the veterinary profession, two, my goal of going to vet school. So I started all of these, different side tracks and found a lot of joy in doing them and started to realize that vet school, although it is an ultimate goal, is getting farther and farther away.
And is that scary or what, like, how do you view that? What does that mean to you?
Yeah, that was scary because it's like that's all I've known, for the past few years. So what's next? So what is possible? Now I have to, it's like taking, a blindfold off and seeing like, oh crap, like there's so many other possibilities. Like I literally can do whatever I want. I have over 10,000 hours. I've been in the veterinary profession, like in an actual hospital for 6 years, like 40 hours a week times 6 years, however many hours that is. I have plenty of experience. I can look at something coming in the door of an animal hospital and be like, it's probably got a yeast infection and they're probably gonna send it home on this, and that I have plenty of experience, but looking around and seeing that the realm of possibility literally increased exponentially once I changed my focus. It was one terrifying, but it also was reassuring. That's why kind of my moniker in my business is be you, create. And it's being yourself and creating a life that you want to live, that you deserve to live, that you're happy to live. Because I had to do that for myself. I had to be myself and realize like I am a creative person. The veterinary industry doesn't really allow you to be creative. It is very stringent, but I can do things that kind of involve this industry, involve something I'm passionate about, which is horses, and be that creative person.
Yeah, so because I was just thinking, like when we've talked, and even just that you've mentioned, is that vet school's not off the table, and that you were thinking of vet school in the next couple of years,
Yeah.
so near future. And so if you are pivoting, how is that going to impact your competitiveness? Go from straight vet to, which is like is going to lead you to vet school versus business owner.
Yeah. Yeah.
Have people told you how that will impact your application? I mean, they may like the diversity of it, your experiences.
No, I haven't really discussed that with anyone, but I do know that the vet school, at least the NC State, they have like a club or something that like, or some sort of association. It's like a business kind of association or whatever that you can get involved in. And I have a theory, it may piss some people off, but I have a theory. There's a lot of unhappy veterinarians, and I don't plan to be one of them. So, you're saddled with this monstrous amount of debt, and
From vet school.
From vet school, yeah. And you kind of have to figure out, like, when you come out of vet school, your price, your salary, isn't enough to live a luxurious life and still pay off your bills. So people are still coming out of school with modest salaries. So my thought process was, how do I position myself so that when I come out of vet school, I hit the ground running? I want to be able to make money while I'm in school. I want to be able to pick up, not necessarily where I left off when I come out of school, but I want to be able to add that value, and in conjunction with my ability to practice medicine. I said, okay, let's focus on building a business, building a brand that can sustain itself, because there's nothing else like that out here. So that's what I'm, working to do until I feel like I'm comfortable enough to apply again and enter a program that I can be proud of.
Yeah, because I was thinking, and that organization we were talking about is the Business Management Association. And that's what I was just thinking, is that veterinarians own their own hospitals and businesses, like the small vet clinics and whatnot. So it's that piece of, you don't take, I don't think, management classes in school.
Right. A lot of vets know how to practice medicine, but they don't know how to run a business. And that, whether you're a small private practice owner or if you work for a company, you will have a much better understanding of how your practice runs if you even have an inkling of business. There's a lot of places where the management gets pushback from the veterinarians on different things because the veterinarians don't understand how to run this business. So I think having that understanding and being able to portray that on an application, I'm not saying it's going to be a shoo-in, but I am going to say that they're never going to have seen an application like mine.
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, and when I worked with the pre-vet students and working with the vet school to encourage diverse students to engage with the vet school and diverse students who may be under-resourced to be able to get the opportunities and hours that would make them a competitive applicant. That was one of the things that they talked about, is to focus on the diversity, because they get tons of 3.8 middle class, upper class women who have worked with cats and dogs.
Yeah.
And so it's that piece of how you're going to separate from the, and I don't know, I'm kind of speaking from ignorance because I haven't been involved in a couple of years with the vet school. If that's still the overwhelming population of vets and vet students.
Yeah, yeah. I talked to someone who's very close in that realm. So Dr. Kennedy, I love him forever, and he is still like a raging. He is the example that I follow of a veterinarian that doesn't seem to be miserable. He told me that they are trying to craft their veterinary classes, their student classes, to model the demographics of North Carolina. They want to model who they serve, the community they serve. And he also told me that North Carolina is 20% African American.
Yeah.
So I think that they are trying their best to highlight and hone in on those people that are equally qualified, but maybe kind of push lower down on the list just because there's an abundance of cookie cutter people with 3.8. So I think they are doing a better job about that.
Yeah, and I know that when I was working with the vet school on these topics, that was the piece they were talking about, is like nationally as a profession, they were being held accountable of diversifying the population of vets, even with regard to small animal, of they're graduating too many small animal vets that can't find jobs or whatnot. And I'm sure that leads to the miserableness, of to vet school. You get out of vet school and then you can't find a job and you don't know it. Like, nobody tells you that there's an overwhelming amount of small animal vets, that there's just not a need for them.
But I also feel like a lot of times, well, it's definitely because there's a younger demographic going into vet school at this point. I mean, coming straight out of undergrad. But if you've been in the industry, long enough, I've been in a practice for 6 years, and I could tell you that on year 2. Like, there's entirely too many of it is so incredibly oversaturated, even here in Raleigh, that there's people coming out that are all upset because the only jobs they can find are in rural areas and yada yada, when you could have admitted somebody who wanted to focus on rural medicine and large animal medicine, So it's a balance. I understand that it's difficult, but all I know is that as they start to represent the community that they're in, it will get a lot better.
Yeah, and back to Dr. Kennedy, because he's so supportive of our trio students also. And he would talk about, it was Kier that would talk about, he would go volunteer with him on Fridays, and it was just like, go run and tackle that llama, because that's the way.
Yeah. I had so many life lessons. Like, I've had times where I caught a goat, like one goat by the horn, and then another goat was running past me, and I caught the other by his horn, and I got 2 goats flying like kites, bouncing off walls in each of my arms, and he's just standing there like, I'm like, help me, sir.
Yeah, I'm a student.
Hey, I'm like flying 2 goat kites. Can you give me a hand? But there's so much experience from Dr. Kennedy. Like, it's just ridiculous.
Yeah, because you did castrating of sheep, didn't you?
Yeah, we castrated goats, sheep, I mean, I've sheared lambs, like trim feet, give vaccines, draw blood, like the whole shebang, whole
Mhm.
shebang. And to
Mhm.
see this, I won't say he's giant, but he's like at least like 6'2" or 6'3".
He's
Just
pretty big. He's
yeah. And to walk up to this llama and just like put his face near their face, and he's just like, like you gotta hum to him. I'm like, no, Dr. Kennedy, what I'm not gonna do is put my face on this llama's face. I don't care what he wants. You can do that part because you got to come back and see this llama, but not me. Okay.
yeah. Yeah, you're getting paid and probably have better health insurance than I do. So, yeah. Do you want to explain who Dr. Kennedy is? So people know, even the pre-vet students for TRIO, they know how to reach out to him and why they would reach out to him.
Yeah. Dr. Kennedy runs his own practice, the Small Ruminant and Camelid Mobile Veterinary Service, I think it's called. He's also in the North Carolina Association of Minority Veterinarians, and he is like the diversity inclusion director over at the College of Veterinary Medicine at NC State. So he has multiple roles, but he is definitely all about diversity, all about providing students with experiences, and can definitely give you some stories that you wouldn't like. You can't make this thing up.
Yeah, and he's been at NC State probably for 20 years. Yeah. Yeah. So he knows what's with regard to vet school application, and he's on the selection committees. So if you, there, the saying goes, it's like not who, it's not who you know, it's who knows you. And
Yeah.
so that's the piece of having somebody who knows you, and that's like you can't, the power of that, like you, there's no way you can earn that.
Yeah. Networking is everything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think there's like critical people to connect with on campus, and those critical people are those people in the admissions committee. So,
Oh yeah.
yeah. And so another one of those, I think, was your academic advisor, Dr. Trivedi.
Yeah, it's so funny because she wasn't even my advisor.
Oh,
My advisor sucked. My advisor asked me how long vet school was my freshman year, and I said, this is not going to be for me. I'm not going to talk to you outside of, I need you to approve. I need you to hit that button to approve my classes. Okay, just did. Thank you. I literally did that for 7 additional semesters. I'm not meeting with you. You don't get to choose my classes. Like, I don't care what you have to say.
mm-hmm.
Then I found Dr. Trivedi, and I was like, I'm going to follow everything that you say. But she wasn't my advisor, but I did work in Vet Pack.
Mm-hmm.
I was an intern there. So we got really close then.
Yeah, because that's a common problem or complaint, concern, even like a worry for a lot of students is that they don't have faith, confidence in their academic advisor, or they don't connect. And that's really scary when you say you're responsible for helping me graduate. Like you're who I'm supposed to come to for that. But if I don't have faith, confidence, connection, what does that mean?
Right.
So if you want to go into, and that's an example of how to deal with that, if you have other mentors.
Right. Yeah. So I'm not going to sit here and say that's an NC State problem because I definitely got my master's at UF and I had the same issue. But I'm going to go into that in a second.
That's University of Florida.
Yeah. University of Florida. So you definitely have to seek out those people that are going to be for you, whether they, have experience and where you want to go, or they know how to get you to that place. Dr. Trivedi, so many people were scared of her. So many people were like, oh my gosh, this is the hardest class I have ever taken, yada, yada, yada. Her anatomy and physiology class. I loved it. Absolutely loved it. And I just connected with her personality. She's a very direct, and very no BS. And that is what I needed at that time. You know, everybody was all fluff and trying to hide opportunities, because I mean, the pre-vet world is very competitive. So, you know, Dr. Trivedi was always sharing stuff with me. You know, I started working at Vet Pack, so I was able to kind of get on that team to help share opportunities for other pre-veterinary students. But that also kind of put the bug in me to create these opportunities for other students. That's why I did the Equine Health series, which was just like a public health program for the horse industry, and taking veterinarians out to different events and doing Coggins and doing vaccines and things for people who may not be able to afford farm calls, or they are in a central location, so they can get that done. They don't have an excuse. So, and it wasn't free, you know, the veterinarians still got paid, but they would discount the farm call because they would have so much, you know, business otherwise. Yeah. So, you know, connected with Dr. Trivedi kind of spurred the momentum of connecting with different industry professionals, so much so that I got to the point between Dr. Trivedi and the Equine Health series that people knew me before I walked in the room. Like, I remember one time at the vet school, because I volunteer for everything. At the vet school, it was for the Equine Health Symposium. And I'm like, that's where I want to be. I want to be in this symposium with all of these horse veterinarians. And I was setting up the table, and this vet student was like, you know, just being snarky, like, no, put this over here. You know, no, not like that. And I'm like, okay, girl, it's okay. You don't have to talk to me like that, but all right. And Dr. Fernando Cardenas.
And you said that to yourself. You didn't say that to her.
No.
I'm just saying, yeah. How you manage that professionally.
Never been professional, but I'm sure my face probably said, girl, if you don't get out of here. But Dr. Fernando Cardenas comes in to get his lunch, and she's like, oh, Dr. Cardenas, it's so good to see you. And he's like, yeah, it's good to see you too. And then he looks down the table and he's like, Abriana? I was like, oh, what's up, Dr. Cardenas? How you been? How's the wife? How are your kids? Oh my God. And her jaw dropped. I was like, okay, see, this is what happens when you make sure that people know who you are and what you want, and you know what your aspirations are. Because I talked to him already, because I had 2 of his veterinarians come out to do an Equine Health series clinic. So, you know, be careful who you mess with, because you never know who they're in touch with.
Now, how were you able to do all this stuff while knowing that the GPA for vet school is so important, and competitively, like a high GPA?
Yeah, I kind of got to the point where I started to see that I was making more of a difference in my community than people with high GPAs. And so I think that's kind of where the pivot may have started, because I was like, yeah, I know I need a high GPA. But I also know that I'm not good at organic chemistry too. Like, you know, I know what I need, but I also know where my strengths lie. So I'm going to take getting a 3.2, a 3.1. I'm going to take that chance and be able to deliver myself with a diversity of experiences and actual impact than a 3.8 and someone who doesn't even, you know, only done research and can't even talk to a client in a clinic. So I took that chance. It might not be for everybody, but that was kind of my outlook on it, because I did a lot of stuff in undergrad that definitely affected my GPA. But here I am 6 years later, and it's definitely pushed me farther than my GPA did.
Yeah, and then one of the ways to counterbalance the undergrad GPA for vet school is to earn a master's.
Mm-hmm.
And so you just mentioned that you did that at University of Florida.
Yeah. 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 I started at University of Florida in 2017. Yeah. And I finished May of this year. And it was the same way. My advisor was mediocre, for lack of a better word at this point. But I just remember, and it's funny how these things happen in initial conversations, but you're supposed to do an online meetup with your advisor because I was in an online program. So thankfully, when all of this COVID stuff hit, it did really affect my learning ability because I was already online. But yeah, I remember in my initial meeting with my preceptor, my advisor, he was like, "So what do you want to do with your life?" And I was like, I mean, I feel like I got a lot of options. Like, do I have to decide right now?
Mm-hmm.
And it was like after that, like it was just completely dismissed. And I'm like, oh, I see you studied in France. How'd you like that? Well, if I didn't like it, I wouldn't have gone. Okay, sir. Well, do you have anything else for me? Because I'm about to go. It just wasn't warm. It wasn't that much of a supportive situation. And fast forward 2.5 years, because I did end up taking a semester off because they canceled a class that I needed. Doing my capstone, my final like experience research project thing, he told me that my plan was too ambitious. I was like, sir, do you know who?
Wow.
You really don't know who I am because I have a plan. Like it's not that ambitious, but okay, I'll do, your minimal suggestion, which I ended up working at the public health department, but I definitely had a different plan in mind. Would have resonated a lot more kind of with the One Health community that I was trying to be a part of. Yeah, that kind of rubbed me the wrong way. And then I was just like, if you don't sign this paper so I can get my degree and get out of here, like I'm done with you.
I've got a couple of questions, but I'm just like, how are you immune to that? Because I do know that current students experience that, and I'm sure you experienced that as a grad, where not only being uninformed advisor, but it's also somebody that says you can't do it. So it's not even being uninformed; it's actually being harmful.
Yeah, yeah,
Disrespectful.
yeah, yeah. And I think, I mean, I come from a very supportive, very thoughtful. Like my parents always, if there was something I want to do, my parents were gonna at least put me in it to try it. If there was something like I said, I think I'm gonna do this, and they're like, I mean, okay, just let us know how we can help. I'm so thankful that I had that because that put the confidence in me, saying like you are capable of doing anything you put your mind to. And they know once I put my mind to something, too. Like it happens. Like it happens. I'm gonna make it happen. It might take me a while and I might struggle, but I'm gonna make it happen. So when dealing with these advisors that just simply don't seem to get it, I like to gauge like how much do I need your approval. If it's not very much, then I'm just gonna continue to do what I feel needs to be done. But I felt like with the master's degree that I did need a lot of his approval to get this piece of paper that I just spent a lot of money on. So I said, okay, I'm gonna do what you suggest. And I got an internship at the public health department. And that was cool. It wasn't what I wanted to do, but it made me get my degree. So
yeah, and I'm actually guilty of what do you want to say, of questioning you, not respecting your decisions.
Sarah, it didn't make sense. Like I realized, so I
tell this. You can tell the story if you. I remember the day. I talk about our interactions with all of that to so many students. So, and I laugh about it. So, anyways, yeah, you want to tell the story?
Yeah. So I don't even remember. I felt like we had like, I don't know, monthly meetings or something. Like I would have to meet with you and share things that happened in my life. So first I got a dog And, I was like, Sarah, it's not that big of a deal. There's me and my 3 roommates. We got it together. I'm not going to struggle because of it, right?
So did I say that you were going to struggle, or I expressed a concern?
You expressed concern. You said that's a lot of responsibility. You need to make sure you're ready for that. And, because you still want the dog to have a quality of life, which I got 100%.
Mm-hmm.
And so then, like the next month, I came in, I sat down, and you're like, what's new in your life? And I was like, so don't get mad. But I bought a horse. And you like, I don't know, something slammed. You were like, you did what? I was like, I know, but he's so cute. I got him from the vet school. I'm trying to get connections at the vet school. Like I had so many reasons. I said, this is honestly a good idea.
Because were you a junior at the time?
I was a sophomore. It was my spring semester. No, fall semester of my sophomore year.
Oh, my heart rate's gone. If I had a Fitbit on, I think I would say my blood pressure is. So said like WTF. I think.
Yeah. So now when I tell that,
I may have turned around my chair. It was like, I can't look at you right now.
Yes.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Sarah was like, how are you going to get into vet school when you have to raise a baby horse? I didn't even get like a grown horse that knows things. I got a 6-month-old weanling that was literally just taken from his mom and decided that I was going to raise him. So that was cool. When I tell the story, I tell people like I did this thing that I do not recommend. I am thankful 100% that I did it, because that stuck me into the horse industry and got me connections that I have now, because I needed to patronize these businesses. But I don't recommend anybody else do that unless, you really, really, really have a plan. So the thing was, I was working a part-time job. I was working like 20 hours a week in a co-op at AT&T. So not only was I having to raise this horse, I was working and still taking between 15 to 18 credit hours. So I think I think the combination of all of that affected my GPA. I can't say it was the horse primarily, but I had to keep the job to support the horse. So everything together, it did affect my GPA. So, I mean, I have a very, very good habit of finding things that I enjoy and sticking to that. Like, I know this was the plan, but I'm having a lot of fun doing this, so I'm gonna do this for a little bit. And that's happened several times in my life. So
yeah, and so that's the piece too, is like students who are burned out, stressed out, like they actually don't have any joy. They're taking physics and organic chem and all of that stuff, but actually the horse was and all that came along with it, that was actually a positive in.
Yeah, it was an outlet. It was an outlet of something. I didn't have to know a formula to make that relationship work. And the horses, I mean, animals in general, but horses, they have therapeutic abilities. That's why they're used in therapeutic riding programs and things like that. So I definitely think that owning and raising that horse through college contributed to my confidence, contributed to my ability to network with people, because I had some substance about my life. Like I wasn't just a student. I was doing other things.
I apologize for responding so negatively and emotionally of not even hearing your reasoning and your plan of taking care of it. So I do apologize. I don't want to be one of those
no,
in your life.
When I'm looking back, like now I can say all these things that really sound good, but then I didn't have a plan. It was just like, I saw this baby horse and I was like, he's really cute. And they said $250. And I was like, what? I just got this real good job. Yeah, I'm going to get it. Like, there wasn't like a real major super duper plan back then. So I think your response was quite warranted. It was just, now hindsight's 2020. That was a good idea for the trajectory of my life at this point. Back then it was like, girl, you are so crazy.
Well, and I think that's the thing too, is it's the expense is not necessarily the horse, it's taking care of the horse.
Right.
Like, they're very expensive animals, to have, or potentially expensive with vet bills and food and all of that, and boarding, paying for that. So yeah, that's like a monthly expense of a child.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, quite difficult. So the other piece too, that now that NC State, so we're recording this in September 2020, which is in the middle of the COVID crisis, where the university for undergrads has gone to online learning. And online learning was not the choice of students, and it was brought about in like an emergency situation. It was next, we're going on online, and of not having it's like, oh, well, I'll just, take other classes that are online. Like, it literally was not a choice. So what is your advice to be successful in online classes?
I think that it is very important to start on the work the day it's assigned. I know that's kind of random, but a lot of times, and I struggled in the beginning, it was like a 2-year program, and I struggled to adjust because I hadn't been in school in 3.5 years. So jumping into it, I'm like, oh, I'll get to that in a little bit. And then the next thing I know, the deadline, is imminent. So a lot of times when, I'm looking through lectures or, looking at the syllabus to see what's due, I would say, let me go ahead, open a document, go ahead and get some words down. Even if I have to write a paper, just outline the thing real quick, and then I'll come back to it, next week when I have more time, something like that. And that way it's kind of already like, when and if I get into crunch time, I don't have nothing. I've already started, I've already kind of thought about this at some point and have something down already. I also would suggest communicating with your teacher a lot. I know a lot of people don't like to be that kid or that adult, that person who is like always talking to the teacher and stuff like that. But I had a point where because you have to schedule your exams online with a proctor and all that stuff. I was taking the exam like at the last possible minute that I possibly could. And I misread an email, and the exam like ended at 5 on the day before, but on the final day it ended at noon, and I had scheduled to take it at 3:30. And I was like, oh crap, I missed the entire midterm. Like, it's gonna, like, there's no coming back. And so I emailed him. I was like, hey, I thought that it was going to end at 5 like it did yesterday. Is there a possibility that you can open this back up so I can take this exam? And he did. And I was so very appreciative of that, because if I wasn't able to take that, like, I might as well not, finish the class. So I think connecting with your instructors, even though it's online, just, shoot them a note, say, thanks, I appreciate that lecture, I learned this one thing. Or, shoot them a quick question and just show them that you're engaged. I think that's definitely a great idea.
Set your calendar to-do list based upon when it's assignments assigned and not when it's due.
Right.
Because sometimes people go, okay, it's due, I'll do it 3 days before. Making the plan. Yeah. And then the other thing it's almost, which I don't know if this is true or not, I may be using the wrong word, but it's like forcing yourself upon an instructor.
Yeah.
like having a close relationship.
Yeah.
Like that's your relationship with your instructor is going to impact your grade to the extent perhaps of your knowledge.
Yeah, and even something happened. I didn't realize this was due at this time. A lot of instructors have a no tolerance policy. Can I submit this late? I'm like, yeah, fine. It's because you've already talked to them.
Right.
And in a lot of these classes, you don't have to know everything. Like, you don't have to know all of the little details, especially when you go into a master's program. It's like more conceptual. They want to know that you have the ability to think, not that you have the ability to regurgitate information. So my master's is in health sciences, with a concentration in One Health. And One Health is the integration of human, animal, and environmental medicine. So basically coronavirus, and the situation surrounding that, and how all of that kind of works together. And so they want to know it is a big picture degree program. So they wanted to know that I had the ability to think in a big picture way, because that's what One Health professionals have to do. Although I did have to learn about all of these different vector-borne, mosquito-borne, waterborne diseases, knowing how they affect people and knowing how people can contract and spread these diseases was much more important than knowing that coccidia is going to be the germ that causes this specific disease. You can't remember everything. So you have to be able to prioritize what you need to know.
Yeah, so we divided this podcast because you're so diverse, so experienced, so successful. So the first hour was going to be focusing on your time, with education at NC State. And then the second hour is going to be more of what you've been doing in the last 4 years or so, and especially what you've done in the last, year and even more recent. So closing of the academic piece, what is your advice to current students to be successful?
My advice is pretty much my advice for life. Find something that you are passionate about.
You can't think about it. You just gotta
do it and see what happens. And that flexibility, like I realized that I'm not at the moment like restricted on anything. Like, I can decide tomorrow that I want to go to cosmetology school because I'm gonna do hair, and like that's possible. Like, I can do that if I want.
Yeah.
The pivot, like, I guess there's kind of a image in like America that you stick with this one thing and that's what you do for the rest of your life, and that's not the case. You do whatever you want to do. Like, you can do something completely different one year and go back. It's the world is open for you for that.
Yeah, it's like a level of open-mindedness. Yeah, flexibility, not being there's a term that's like elasticity.
Yeah,
that you can. So the second part, just amazing to me, and I think probably for you too. It's what you've accomplished and the response has been. And accomplished meaning you are impacting a major, very serious aspect of our society. And so that's the piece. It's not even, which you had spoken about, is, you're a co-host of a podcast, or, you wrote a book. You are actually impacting an aspect of society that is a public health issue. I'll end it at that. So the piece that I wanted to first talk about is your contributions to diversity, inclusion, representation, in the equine industry and community in North America.
Yeah.
And they're obviously, that's like you had talked about, that has been an ongoing issue that the vet profession and vet school has been addressing. However, again, we are taping this in September 2020. And so, even the timing of that in society and the critical nature of that.
Right.
So, do you want to start kind of sharing all of that? Or is that how you would describe one of your major missions and passions?
Yes. Yes. So I feel like even as an undergrad, I I recognize the lack of diversity in the veterinary field. I've got into the professional world and recognize the lack of diversity in the veterinary professional field. So first it's like just in the undergrad, pre-vet track, but then it's in the professional field. So once I decided that, like, I worked my way up as a technician, doing anesthesia, doing dental prophylaxis, like all that stuff, and got bored because we didn't ever see anything that great or that interesting. Decided I wanted to go into the management side of it to learn the business aspect. And so, as a horse owner, and as something, that's something that I'm really passionate about, I started looking at the businesses in the horse industry as well, so not only focusing on veterinarians, but just everyone as a whole, and how they exist and how they deliver and how they get their clients and how they keep their clients and appeal to everyone. So starting 2019, I partnered with my now best friend Caitlin, and we just discussed, like, hey, like, we want to, like, I've always been about action. I've always been about, okay, what am I going to do to make this difference? I found a problem. I complained about it a little bit. Okay, now what? Because you can't just stop there. I've always been about doing something about it. And we decided that we would start a podcast. And so when I look at that from a business standpoint, like, I tell my clients and people that are part of my community, I say, hey, you got to find your niche. You got to find where you fit. And a lot of times for people of color in the horse industry, they struggle to find where they fit. They know what they like, they know what they enjoy, but they also know they don't fit. So we wanted to create a platform and create a community that, even if you are the only person of color in your barn in the middle of Oklahoma or somewhere that doesn't have a lot of Black people, you can still connect with these people that are all across the country that may or may not have similar experiences to you, but can lend you some advice and make you feel like you're not alone.
Date your experiences.
Right.
When there may not be somebody in that barn to validate.
Exactly. So that is what we've developed. And from that, from our ability to connect with people and our ability to portray stories in a way that's it's not complaining. Not everyone has experienced racism in their day-to-day life, or they weren't necessarily affected by it, but being able to tell these stories in the light of, we are diverse people and we have diverse experiences, that was very important to us. So now that we have spoken about this for an entire year, after the incidences with George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and the civil unrest that is this entire summer, we have been, people are paying attention. Like, oh, these people share these people's experiences, and it's not like we don't get paid to do this. Like, we barely. I mean, this is
what's the name of your podcast so people can find it?
It's Young Black Equestrians. So we're on every podcast network. You can find us on youngbblackequestrians.com. Yeah, we're on all of our social medias, our Young Black Equestrians.
Did you see a increase in listenership and subscribers?
Mm-hmm.
The onset of the response after Floyd.
Yeah. Yeah, we did, because there was a push to amplify Black voices.
Mm-hmm.
And we were the Black voices that were already talking, you know? It's not like they had to like amplify somebody who was quiet, you know? So we were already talking. We were already putting ourselves out there. We were already making it known that these people were important. And we always say, like, be the people. We aspire to be the people we wish we had when we were growing up. And so, person I wish I had growing up would speak out when there was something that they are not happy with. Someone who is not afraid to pivot, who is flexible, who would go after the things they're passionate about and not put themselves in a box and kind of reduce themselves just to make somebody else happy. So that's pretty much been how we've navigated this entire summer. You know, we went from being podcast hosts, and I always say just trail riders, because some people think that we're, you know, out here competing and da da da, and I'm like, no, like the people that y'all talk junk about, you know, or not always, but kind of in the grand scheme of the horse industry, like the lower priority people, like we're the ones, you know, putting other people, giving them the mic. And
there's definitely a hierarchy in equine industry.
Yeah. We're ones giving people the mic and letting them share their story.
Mm-hmm. So that's the piece too, is what do you think would have happened if you started the podcast in response to the resurgence of the Black Lives Matter versus that you started when started because it was needed?
Yes, I don't think we would have lasted, because we were so overwhelmed with the amount of attention and requests to interview and just everything. I don't think if we didn't already have a foundation and have that support system and know who we were as people and what our goal was for this podcast, I don't think that we would have survived the sheer amount of attention and requests and emails and inboxes. And I think we would have been very overwhelmed and stressed out about it. Because we have such longevity in this game, in this podcasting game, we were able to have that level of discernment and say, hey, no, I'm not going to talk to you for free. You know, I have other things to do. And then, but we were also able to say, okay, let's prioritize who we're going to speak with. Do we want to talk to this nationally syndicated magazine who was just talking junk about someone else like a couple months ago that we saw? Or are we going to talk to this up and coming blog who has always been about stuff that we prioritize, and give them the chance to kind of, you know, I won't say hop on our coattails because that has such a negative connotation, but get the attention from having us on the podcast or having us on their blog or whatever. Yeah, being in this game gave us a level of discernment that I don't think we would have been able to survive if we had just started in June.
So it's like knowing that and trusting that you know it's needed and valuable, and not waiting for society, like a larger population, to agree with you that's needed and valuable.
Right. There were a lot of different initiatives and, you know, alliances and organizations kind of started out of, the civil unrest of this summer, that when you look at them right now and it's only September, they do not have anything going on,
Mhm, mhm,
and it's like we're all about like appreciating people want to make a difference. But when there's people out here that have been doing this, instead of dividing the resources, how about you support somebody who's already doing what you're trying to do?
mhm. Yeah, yeah. And being able to, like with that blog, to support them and assist them. So
Right.
if you are both starting at the same time, that
Hmm.
it's like knowing like what you do, even if it's not like business, like if media outlets weren't contacting you a year ago saying, "Oh, can you start this podcast?" That you wouldn't have been able to help other people who
Right.
want. Yeah, yeah. Um, so the thing you did bring up, and I know is an issue too for a lot of the students I work with, is the value of lived experiences and recognizing expertise. And so when you talked about not doing it for free, as that your expertise, lived experiences, and you're not a person with 40 years experience with a PhD, etc., that there is a financial value to your lived experiences and expertise.
Yeah, yeah. And every situation's different. Every conversation's going to be different. But if you approach me because you know that I'm going to bring value to your platform or to your conversation, I'm going to ask, what do you have in your budget for this kind of consultation?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
And it took me a long time to be able to ask that.
mm-hmm,
It's not an easy question because you feel like they're going to say, "Oh, never mind." No, but if you look around and you see that they are able to financially support someone else, you know, especially in this conversation of valuing people of color in your industry or in your company, you
mm-hmm,
know, what is what do a lot of people associate with value? Money.
mm-hmm,
So you can't tell me you value me when you want me to work for free.
mm-hmm.
You want me to expend my mental capacity that I have worked to develop. You want me to expend this ability to speak eloquently for free. Now, some situations, if you're gonna be in a national magazine, you're like, yes, I'll tell you everything you want. But if you're gonna, if you're asked to consult on campaigns for a national company, but your name is not necessarily going to be like your face is not plastered all over it, then
Mm-hmm.
how much have you budgeted for this consultation?
Because that's the thing, is it just continues that dynamic of, aren't you lucky that we're acknowledging you?
Exactly.
And that's of part of the problem. It's that, yeah, again, it's like that you don't have inherent value, but yeah, like, aren't I great for acknowledging your existence? So yeah, no, good for you. I'm glad. And that's, I think, more for students to know, is how to ask for that. Like, what is in your budget, knowing that that's a possible question that does exist.
Yeah, it's definitely a possibility, and especially that's where the longevity comes in, because especially if you know like where these people are coming from, if you know this is a multi-million dollar company, if it's a company that you have patronized yourself, like I buy stuff from y'all all the time, and you want me to get on this campaign and you're gonna tell me that you can't, you know, fund my expertise.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
I know you at least have the money that I sent you for the stuff that I bought. Like, don't the level of discernment definitely comes from experience,
yeah.
but
Mhm.
I definitely do my research and look at different people that seem to be along the same lines. Like, I won't say influencer because that kind of looks like cheesy, like I just want to take pictures and model and stuff. Like, no,
Mhm.
that's not
Mhm.
the case. Making an impact. Like, you're paying for the impact that I can have on your company, on your audience, on your community.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no. And I think the piece too, the other piece that's specific to agriculture is that there's been a historical level of discrimination and in people of color in agriculture. Like I know the USDA has been sued
Yeah.
for that. And so and I the you were quoted in a recent article, and that article focused on or addressed even the historical systematic examples or existence of discrimination in the equine world. So do you want to share more about that?
Yeah, I mean,
Well, what was the article? It was in the Canadian.
yeah. So that article, like, she talked to me. I did not know that it was going to be that big of an article. Like, I thought she was just like, oh, this is diversity, da, da, da. But she, I mean, went way back, like, to history and,
Yeah.
kind of brought it forward. Okay, so yeah, so that was the Canadian Horse Journal, and I talked to Margaret about this article, and I didn't even know that it was going to be as big as what she did. Like, I didn't know she was going to go into the historical context. The article's titled Racial Bias and Ethnic Diversity in the Horse Industry, and it's in the Canadian Horse Journal. And I just am like, okay, this lady from Canada wants to talk about diversity. Cool, sounds good. But she really, really did it justice. I mean, she really went back and brought us forward till today, and I was able to contribute to today's thoughts on the issues of diversity in this industry. And I wouldn't have that opportunity if I wasn't already talking about it. And even though I'm in my own corner of the world, thinking that nobody has listened to me, people are reaching out saying, oh, I heard what you said about this. Can you expound on that more? And I think that, that fills me with pride, because I don't want to say that at one point I didn't have a voice, but I've always had a voice. I just didn't know that it mattered. I didn't know that. I didn't always think that I had something to add. Like, yeah, I can talk about this, but does it really matter? Is it really adding to this conversation? But now I do. Now I am able to say that the thoughts, the things that I have worked to develop and have worked through in my mind in conjunction with my experiences, add to this conversation. Like, right before this, I just got off the phone with a New York Times journalist, and I'm like, okay, here we are. Like, I just told my mom, yeah, I got a call from the New York Times journalist at 10:30. Like,
yeah.
I know, and today is her birthday. I was like, why can't I get in touch with you until 12:30 on your birthday? Like, what the
Don't you know who I am?
Right. I'm like, this is not gonna happen when you come work for me. And she is just, she knows. Like, once I get big enough and I need a finance person, I can put her on payroll. Yeah. She will be, Black Unicorn Creative CFO.
If you can go into a little bit about, like, what is the history of bias in the horse industry?
Yeah. So, I mean, it stems from the images that we see on TV. When you're watching Westerns and things, where do you see a Black person in a Western? These black and white, these brown and white movies or TV shows. And my dad loves watching Westerns. I mean, every Saturday, it's like we couldn't watch cartoons because he was up watching Westerns.
Yeah.
So we didn't get to watch cartoons until after breakfast when he went outside. But 1 in 4 cowboys in the American West was a Black person. The rest of them were white, indigenous, well, we'll say horse people, because obviously indigenous Native Americans were not always cowboys, but
Mhm.
we're not seen as cowboys. But that representation is not given in the media. You know, there were instances, the first jockeys for the Kentucky Derby were Black.
Mhm.
They have an entire cemetery dedicated to Black jockeys for the Kentucky Derby. Do you see that now? No.
Mhm.
Everybody talk about that? No. I mean, they talked about it this year because it's brought to the forefront. But I mean, even a lot of the jockeys now, they're of Latin descent. And so it got to the point where people of color got so good at this thing that America thought was a white activity or sport, that they said, no, you're not allowed to do this with us. You know, there was Bill Pickett. He could compete he could go to a rodeo, but he was only allowed to compete when it was technically over and people started leaving.
Mhm. Mhm.
You know, until people caught wind, like, oh, y'all are having stuff like y'all having an after party. What? You having an after party where the Black cowboys get to go out there and ride the bulls? And then it was bad again. It was like, okay, no, now too many people are trying to stay for the after rodeo, so y'all can't do this at all. You know, and it was the constant silencing and the constant shutting down and erasure of the Black contribution to the horse industry that honestly fuels how much I have to say today,
Mhm.
because we're talking about right now, which is why I had to talk to this journalist about the use of the word plantation in the names of these giant events in the horse industry. And people are like, oh my gosh, a plantation is a place where they grow plants. And I'm like, okay, well, it's also the name. Like, I don't care what Miriam said, Miriam,
Mhm. Mhm.
because it's also a place where people were held under chattel slavery and were killed and beaten and raped and murdered. So, you know, they grew plants there too. But let's not forget, you know, all of this other stuff. Let's not pretend that didn't happen.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah,
So,
they're not museums of a theoretical background.
yeah, like this is real life. This is the stain of American history, and you know, you're upset over a name change.
Mhm.
You know, come on.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, yeah. And the name changes have been ongoing with different sports, and
Right.
something about that triggers people. So
Mhm. Mhm.
now, what do you know the responses that have been to that article?
I'm not sure of that one specifically, just because it is like a different country and I don't always get to see stuff directly related to that. But I know from, you know, articles I've written for nationally syndicated media outlets, you know, here in America, a lot of people are just like, oh, are we still talking about this? And geez, let's just ride a horse. Like, that is, you have the privilege of saying that.
Mhm, mhm,
You
mhm.
know,
Oh,
I too want to just ride my horse. But if the person is going to stop me and ask me whose truck I'm driving, whose trailer I have, and whose horse that is, and question me and want to look at all my paperwork when they didn't question you when you came right before me, that impacts my experience. So I am going to talk about
yeah. So, what have been your experiences of discrimination, racism, bias?
it. In the past, when I was showing a lot more, it just comes in the form of microaggressions, just questioning, side eyes, you know, the the do you belong here? Like, are you lost? Like, do you need help? Like, no, I'm good. But what you mean? Like, no, I'm fine. Thank you. I've had a lot of people that have been great. I'm not saying that like, oh my God, you know, I'm not trying to cry a river,
Yeah.
but I know that there's not everybody's as strong as me. Not everybody is going to continue to do this faced with those sorts of adversities, things like
Mhm,
that.
mhm,
So as of recent, it's been pretty much just social media because that's how everybody's staring at their computer all day. So, they're like, why does it have to be young Black equestrians? Why can't it just be all equestrians? Because, ma'am, I'm not all equestrians. I'm young, I'm Black, and I ride horses. That's why. Like, and we interview. I mean, we've had a 67-year-old, a 70-year-old on our podcast. We're not discriminatory in the age bracket, but we do want to highlight these experiences of these people because nobody else was until this summer. So I think that's where our respect comes from, because people know that this is our priority and we haven't wavered from that at all.
Yeah. No, congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I'm sure there's like a psychic cost to that. And so what else have you done that has impacted the issue of bias discrimination for people of color in the horse world? Because I know you started, which you can talk more about, but several years ago, where you went to schools and all of that stuff.
Yeah. I have always, I talk a lot. I mean, I just do. So people have always asked me to come back and speak about my profession, veterinary medicine. I'll go and take pictures of x-rays and teeth and, different ailments and stuff just to share about the veterinary profession as a whole for students that are interested. But as I partnered with my friend Caitlin for this podcast, she already had a nonprofit that she was trying to get off the ground. It's called Saddle Up and Read. You can learn more about that at saddleupandread.org. But she was on the search for books that represent Black cowboys, Black horse people. And a lot of the books are pretty much just about how they came out of slavery and were trying to do things or whatever. With her program, we would go around and read to, different schools, different grade levels. And a lot of the times, obviously we're not being asked to read to fifth graders. So a lot of the times we were asked to read to classes that were, the books were a little too high of a reading level for them. And so we're making up stories based on the pictures. Like, the kids can't see the words. Like, we're like, okay, Billy rode a bull. Then he fell off and flipped the page. Like, so I said, I'm going to publish some books that we can read to these little kids that is a fun, engaging story and represents Black horse people in not a scope that's stemming from their struggles coming out of slavery. It's important history, but some stories you just want to be able to say, oh yeah, this is a little boy, the boy in the book, the boy in the ball. Like, it doesn't have to have a historical context. So that's when I started the Cowgirl Cameron book series.
You can find that on Amazon.com, and I think there's a website specific to your book series.
Yeah, cowgirlcameron.com. It's CAMRYN. And, I started with the first one, and it kind of came out like just out the gate, like, fast, because I had doubts. I always doubt myself before something big happens. But I was like, you know what? I'll put this out here. And I don't care if anybody buys it, because it's just for me, and it's just for Saddle Up and Read. And we're going to read this book to all these kids, and it'll be fine. And then people were like, this is amazing. And I was like, oh, thank God.
Because would you define that as imposter syndrome?
Oh, yes, 100%. Me and imposter syndrome go back, like, way back, all the way back to pre-veterinary days. Like, and it came to the point where I was just like, so what? Like, I'm going to do it anyway. Like, I'm going to do it anyway. What's the worst that can happen? You tell me no, or, it doesn't work. I had a use for it. I knew why it was going to be important for me. So I said, I'm going to just put this out here, and whoever, whatever, they can do what they want with it. And so there was I kind of was working on two at the same time. So I was able to get the second one out. Like, the first one came out in August, second one came out in October, I think. I mean, the response was the same. And so with the second book, I incorporated the miniature horse that I had purchased earlier that year. And I wanted him to be a therapy mini. So we have been working to train to be able to visit homeless, or not homeless people. We did see homeless people, but we're trained to visit kids and old people, and just to provide some joy in people's lives. And so I incorporated him in the book, and I'm like, boom, you asked me to come read this story, and then I can pop out at the end of the story with this little miniature horse that came out and hopped out the car, and it's great. Perfect.
Car? It fits in a car?
Oh yeah. So see, what had happened was
Go ahead, sorry.
I felt like an idiot hauling this gigantic truck and horse trailer for this little 150-pound horse to jump out. So I said, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to buy this little minivan that my dad's friend had, and I'm going to trick it out, and I put stalls in the back, and now we have a mini mobile. And Encore, the miniature horse, you can find him on all the socials at Encore_the mini. Hops in the back of the mini mobile, and we go. We have a reading event to go to on Sunday. Okay. And so when I go to these reading events, I bring my book, and a lot of times, I'm showing the kids the book, and I'm like, these are the characters, and this is my picture with my miniature horse. And all right, guys, you guys did a great job listening. I have a surprise for you. And y'all go outside, and boom, there's a miniature horse outside.
You want to read a story? I don't know how long they are.
Yeah, I can read.
You want to read it to us?
Yeah.
Being read to is also therapeutic.
I'll read the shorter one.
All
right, it's Cowgirl Cameron and the Crazy Hair Day.
And illustrated by Abriana Johnson.
Yes, authored and illustrated by myself. Good morning, my friend, says Cowgirl Cameron. Gasp! Cameron said, my hair is wild.
Well, if you want to describe it to the listening audience.
So Cowgirl Cameron is stretching as she wakes up in the morning, and then she looks up at her crazy curly hair and is like, woo! What am I going to do? I have to feed the horses. Wait, I have an idea. She's got a little light bulb. I will wear a hat. Cameron tried on a baseball cap. Her cap says Cowgirl up. Says Cameron. Too big. Cameron tried on a green beret. Cameron said. Too small. She's got a little green beret cocked to the side. What will I try on next? Wait a second. Cameron remembered something. I can wear a cowboy hat. Cameron reached way up high to get her cowboy hat. She's reaching on top of her closet of clothes. Hey, this is just right. Now I can go feed the horses. Cowgirl Cameron is all set and ready to feed her herd. The end. Got a little cowboy hat on and got her buckets, and she's headed out to feed the horses.
So what was the influence to write that story and the inspiration for that specific story?
Yeah, well, inspiration, it's kind of like Goldilocks and the Three Bears, kind of modeled after that. But hair is very important in the Black community. And a lot of times girls are like, oh, if it's not straight, if it's not, pressed and always, intact, then their self-esteem is affected and their inherent value is affected. So a lot of times when I go on these book readings, I'll have just, hairpins in and my hair out in the back and just curly fro situations or a big puff ball on the top of my head, just because it's like, hey, yeah, like I wrote and illustrated this book, and this is what I look like. I look like someone that is in your home. I look like your family. This is something that you can do. I look like you. This is possible, and you can do great things because they look up to you when you're a speaker that comes to their class. I mean, you can do this. You know, that representation, they can see me, that I look like them, and this is what I have accomplished. So they know that it's possible.
So when was the first time you saw a person in the horse world that was of color or had similar hair or?
So my experience riding horses was at trail rides. So I had a cousin who he always was like into like not the weirdest thing, but like he has a 16-foot ball python, like just weird random things.
Yeah.
And he was like, "Oh, y'all want to go out to this trail ride?" And we're like, "Okay, cool, that's fun, yeah." So we literally drove to the middle of the woods and like opened to this field, and there were hundreds of black horse people, like hundreds of them. And a lot of people can't even fathom that, but I grew up riding horses with a bunch of other black people. And so that was another thing with the podcast. We're like, hey, not all of our experiences are the same, because there's a bunch of black people out there who have never even seen another black person on a horse. So that was like the first time I realized, like, you can't say that the issue or the barrier of owning a horse or being a participant in the horse industry is only finances. Because I'm out here with, middle class people, like just regular people. Like a lot of them will say, yeah, my coworkers don't even know I do this on the weekends. Like they might not even know I have horses. But that's who I grew up with. So that's how I knew, like, oh, this is a thing. Like I can do this. Like look at this is representation, in itself. So,
and you're from North Carolina, correct?
Yeah, I'm from Chapel Hill, which is like, I mean, it's definitely not primarily black, but it is known for being more diverse. Between Chapel Hill and Carborough, it's known for having that sort of name for itself, I guess.
Yeah, that's great. Good for you. Yeah. So that's nice that you're doing the book for people who don't even have access to that experience, or even having someone to take you there, like somebody in your family that had, because of however old you were, 8, you would be able to, have that exposure, perhaps.
Right.
No, good. And so one of the things, in addition to Saddle Up and Read, was for your book was the YouTube video of a equestrian Olympian reading the book. Do you want to talk about that? Very cool.
Yeah, BZ Madden. So I woke up one morning and I had like 5 text messages. I mean, I could hear it while I was sleeping, like bzz, 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 bzz. I'm like, what is going on? And it's like, BZ Madden read your book, and I was like, okay, cool. So I'm like, I go to BZ Madden's page. Mind you, I just woke up. Like I didn't research who she was. I just said, oh, thanks so much. Thanks so much for reading my book. I really appreciate it. And then throughout the day, people are like, BZ effing Madden. Like people that I knew from college that I hadn't even talked to. They're like, girl, BZ effing Madden. I said, okay, there have been multiple people that literally have said, BZ effing Madden. Who is this lady? Now that I'm awake, let me go figure out who this lady is, because I don't know. And then I looked her up and I was like, oh. Oh, she's kind of a big deal. And so I talked to someone at the Horse Network where I've written a couple articles for, and she was like, yeah. So, yeah, when I saw that, I was like, this is crazy. It's BZ Madden. Like, she is the Usain Bolt of the horse industry. She is the clutch, in show jumping. If you need somebody on your team to bring you back and get you the points, she is the one to do it. And I was like, oh.
Yeah, she's highly respected, highly successful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then I was just like, okay, this is a big deal. And this is insane that this is happening. But this is a big deal. And I just it just, I'm so appreciative. You know, oh, she just read Cowgirl Cameron and the Crazy Hair Day. I'm just so appreciative that value was there. Like, it wouldn't have happened if I just didn't say, just F it, I'm gonna put it out here. And, you know, for me to read with Saddle Up to Read, and, you know, if somebody wants to buy it, they can buy it. That it wouldn't have happened if I didn't do that. If I didn't take that leap and just put myself out there, you know, to try to help somebody.
Yeah, and that, because she read it to her horse.
Mm-hmm.
YouTube posted. I'm sure it's posted on other sites.
Yeah.
She read it to her horse. And then on YouTube, when I last checked, it had 1.5 thousand views.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that. I have so many things like just randomly happening. Like, I just, it's crazy.
What does it feel like?
It feels surreal a little bit. Like, and it's not like it's like getting to my head or anything, but I'm just like I have a mission. You know, I have this calling that has developed that, you know, I am so very appreciative of the attention that it has gotten, but I can't let that get in the way. I can't let that stop what I've got going on.
Yeah, to get stuck there.
Yeah, to get stuck there, because I mean, I've always been like a what's next kind of person. What's next? What's gonna happen next? How can I level up? And that's what we've done with the podcast. Like, first season, you know, we were working out the kinks. Second season, our audio was much better. We had a much better process for it. Third season, we started the YouTube channel and kind of recorded or shared the videos of the recordings that we did. And then this fourth season, I mean, we've been so inundated with the attention of the summer that there's nothing like super big that's different. But, you know, we've got our merchandise, we've got, you know, I think we're focusing a little bit more on community building than just spitting out audio. So we do like a Winner Circle Wednesday where people share their wins for the week on Instagram, go on Instagram Live. And, you know, Wednesday is like my day of the week where I'm like, okay, let me look back at Monday and Tuesday. Okay, was it good? Okay, great. Keep up the good work. Or did it suck? All right, what can I do differently? Because Thursday and Friday are coming. Like, I don't need to have a sucky entire week. I thought that was a good way to kind of boost the morale in the middle of the week.
Mm-hmm. So what are some of your wins, or what are some of the wins people shared that really impacted you?
Yeah, I mean, people share like not yesterday, but last week we had a lady who was like, yeah, I bought my daughter her first horse this week. You know, I know how that is, you know, and I was hoping she would come back yesterday and tell us, but I don't think she was on. But we've had people, like, we had a girl yesterday who said that she was teaching her horse how to fetch. I'm like, ma'am, I can't even teach my horse how to bring himself when I call. Like, you're teaching your horse to bring something else when you call? That blows my mind. And it just lets you know, like, what's possible. Like, okay, you can tell them to go get something. That's crazy.
And the other piece of the reaction to the book, so it's on Amazon, and I looked that up today, and it only has 5 stars. The responses from the verified readers have only been 5 stars. Yeah, I want to read a couple of these, or you will constantly read them, or well, I want to read them to other people.
No, I have no idea what you're talking about, so go ahead. Okay.
All caps. I absolutely love this book. Cowgirl Cameron is the book I wanted when I was a kid. It's heartwarming to see an African American cowgirl in a book. I have read this book to my children and to groups of children in many classrooms. They, all caps, love it too. Kids really love the animals she has. It's fun to hear them guess what kind of animal the alpaca is. If you need a book about the importance of teamwork, this is the book for you.
I haven't heard that one. Aww. That's awesome.
What does that feel like? You've got a huge smile.
I know. I know. I always have to not tear up sometimes, but it's crazy to me because I know, I mean, I drew all of the pictures and stuff on my iPad. Like the program that I use tracks the amount of time spent on these illustrations and things like that. And I know, self-publishing to Amazon, the first book I submitted 18 times to get the formatting right and everything. The second book I submitted 8 times. And which is nice because Amazon, they're not gonna let you just put out some mess. Like they do actually have people check it, which I appreciate 100%. So just knowing, going through all that, it wasn't for naught. People value when knowing that people value the things that come out of my brain, like that just is like, I mean, it's heartwarming. It's validation, when I go through periods of imposter syndrome or stress or doubt or have difficulty wrapping my head around my ability to do something. I mean, I can look at stuff like that. I can look at the reviews. I can look at the impact. I can look at the fact that I got to go to the post office today to send out 2 more books and a Cowgirl Cameron hat to say somebody's listening. Somebody supports you.
Well, and one of the goals you had said before was to have that exposure and representation for people to see. In all caps, I absolutely love this book. Cowgirl Cameron is the book I wanted when I was a kid.
Yeah, that means everything. That's like I achieved my thing. Like in Mario, like dun 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 dun, 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 like, and then you go down the chute. Like that's my jam. That's how I feel.
I'm glad I could read that to you.
I know. I really need to be better about checking things, but I just have a lot. I got a lot going on, and I will say that too. Like had all these plans when I quit my job, and I was going to do all this stuff. I was like, is it the same amount of hours in the day? Because I have a lot to do. I was just talking to a friend about that. Like I got a lot of stuff to do, and there's no way. Like when I was working my 9 to 5, there was the same amount of hours, and I was trying to do this stuff at the same time. That's crazy.
Yeah, because is there a difference between people wanting to hear you, have your access to your expertise, engage, versus actual compliments, actual saying, you have personally impacted me?
Yeah.
What are compliments?
Yeah.
Or positive praise, or people saying about how it impacted them?
Yeah, a lot of times I get feedback from parents with kids. I get cards with pictures. When I read my book with the donkeys, like that school, they just sent me a card in the mail. Like just people being appreciative of kind of the work that I've done. Like it's an incredible feeling. And I don't know. I just feel like yeah, like you read those compliments, but even in all the work that I've done, with the podcast and stuff like that, people are it's not commonplace for people to have a voice, apparently. That's not what people expect all the time. And so they say thank you for bringing up this thing that hasn't been brought up, or thank you for addressing this thing that I've been battling with internally because no one else is talking about it, or I couldn't relate to someone who was talking about it. And I just feel like that's, I really hate the word like niching down because people like are afraid to be super specific. But when you find your community, Like, it's exactly that. It's a village. Like, everybody's supporting each other. So it's not even like a, oh, everybody listen to what I have to say, and then I don't receive feedback. You know, a lot of people will say like, "Hey, I really like this," or "Wait, when you talked about this, I've never related, but somebody might relate." You know, things like that. So that's why I try to, no, at this point, nobody's coming up with something brand new. Like, everybody's reinventing the wheel and putting their face on it and putting their own spin on it. So you can't be afraid to do that, be compensated for it, and work in within your community to make a difference just because somebody else is doing it.
Right.
Because they can't do it like you.
Right. Right. Yeah, and I do want to jump because we are pushed against time, and I know that you're busy. But that's also the piece of being 27 and starting a business in which you don't have to have a job. Like that, like a second source of income. Because people who start businesses, I can see a stereotype of, oh, they have a MBA, all of these different things. So I would like you to talk about your company, the Black Unicorn Creative, and even starting with like what's the significance or the inspiration for that name of the company.
Yeah, yeah. So I actually, there's a song that I had come across by Two Chains, and this, it has a lady like speaking at the beginning of it,
Mm-hmm.
and it like resonated with me so much. I recall so many never ever thought you'd make it. So sad they were mistaken. The joy they tried to take it. Mama said that the best thing you can do is be you. This world ain't got but one, so give credit where it is due. Ain't that the truth? And here you are, a black unicorn. Mythical, mystical since the day that you were born. Mastered all the madness, let the magic have its way. Let the power paint the day, let the God have his say.
Mm-hmm.
That's just a little
Mm-hmm.
excerpt. But
Mm-hmm.
I was like, you're right. So, and I wanted it, obviously. So the business started off as like just doing crafts. So that's why the cream kind of snuck in there, so people would know that this is like, I'm making things. I'm making things. So that's what I got my LLC under. But now, like, I had to do a pivot because I was finishing up my master's and wasn't able to focus on it as much. But kind of with all of the things that have happened, I realized, what I valued the most, and I valued helping people in the horse industry overall. Like, my track record speaks to that. So I had to look back and say, hey, when you're confused as to what to do next, look back and see what you have done that's been unconventional, or been like, you were supposed to be doing this one thing but you did something else that made you happy, and use that as fuel to go forward. You can always pivot. I love doing crafts and stuff. You can always pivot and do something different. But that moment of clarity came for me when I looked back and said, hey, I'm not feeling fulfilled in this veterinary industry anymore. The politics of corporate veterinary hospitals, I was just like done with it. Like, there was nobody there that I saw that I wanted to be. I didn't want to be the veterinarians there. I didn't want to be, you know, the upper level management that I saw, um, outside of the hospital. So I got to do something different. I gotta create this life. I gotta create this person that I wanted to be. And so I mean, I had to quit. And I researched, I read, I did all this stuff, and people are like, you've got to have a 3-month savings before you quit your job, things like that. And I'm like, I don't even make enough at this job to have a 3-month savings. Like, this doesn't work for everybody. Now, I'm not saying, quit when you have no money, but I was like, I can't, like, this model doesn't work for me. So I said, I'm going to use the leverage that I have, the leverage of the community that I have built already. And I'm already got conversations out there to
Mhm.
help myself in a professional capacity, because at this point it's, like a hobby. And I'm like, no, I'm going to focus on these people, and I'm going to push into this community
Mhm.
and make a difference, because I can see like there's nobody else doing it. There's
Mhm.
no other people of color, in a business aspect trying to assist horse businesses in, maintaining clients and leveling up in their business. And a lot of time, I mean, horse people are usually behind on technology,
Mhm.
but a lot, especially now, they're in the midst of a global pandemic, people are understanding why they should have a priority of putting themselves online. And
Mhm.
so it's like, hey, let's see how you can help in that capacity, as well as make a living off of it.
So what does your company do? Like, what services, resources do you offer?
Yeah, so I pretty much help horse businesses establish their digital hoof print. That's kind of what I say. And that gets them, developing a website,
Mhm.
establishing social media, establishing a brand, logo design, putting yourself out there outside of word of mouth. How else are you going to get business? Outside of putting your flyers up at a feed store, how else are you going to maintain this lifestyle that you're trying to live? And that's getting online, for people to be able to search who you are and to say, hey, I want to go to a Western barn in Raleigh, North Carolina that allows beginner riders.
Mhm.
Okay, you need a website that showcases that that is what you offer.
Mhm.
So, logo design, web design, social media assistance, like that is what I do at the moment.
Clients do you have?
I have 4 at the moment, which I didn't even realize was going to be like that's sufficient. That's a good, number of people. I've got monthly clients. I've got people that are like a one time, like this is just what they need, and I've gotten clients with the help of Dr. Kennedy, like, because
Yeah.
once you put it out there, like this is what I want to do, this is what I'm doing, the people that are already around you and already support you, they know somebody that knows somebody
Right.
that can always help you out that way.
Mhm. Yeah, you can't do it or you can do it in a vacuum, but
It's not going to be nearly as successful.
yeah, or sustainable.
Right. Right.
Yeah. Kind of a general, or this is a long question, but it's like what actions, mindset, which you've mentioned, education skills, did you use to develop like a successful business model, and that all those things lead to you having to be successful, like in the quality of work that you provide.
Yeah. So from being a person that likes to know lots of things and likes to do lots of things, I started building websites when I was in high school. And I know that a lot of times it's dependent upon the access or the resources that your high school have. But the things that I do, like editing the podcast, I know how to edit audio because we hated fundraising as a cheerleading squad and we needed some music to go to cheer competitions. Like, and I was like, okay, well, I'm gonna try to, I fostered those skills while I was in high school, so I was comfortable, now years later doing that stuff. Um, I was on a STEM track, so
And this is in high school cheerleading.
yeah, in high school cheerleading, yeah. I was on the STEM track in high school, so they didn't really value creative arts. Like I never got to do creative things really. I was in science-based things, research programs, things like that. But I was able to draw the banner for the football players to go run through.
Mm-hmm.
So it was like a culmination of these experiences that I've had growing up, coming up through undergrad also, just being familiar with horses, that kind of led me to to where I am today. I mean, I've always had entrepreneurial spirit. Like, my family is a family of entrepreneurs. My dad has had his own business for years. My uncle, my grandma, like they've all had their own business. And that's on my dad's side. And on my mom's side, they're educators. You know, so I've always seen that possibility. It was always in front of me. So that there wasn't ever like oh, this is absolutely impossible, because I was able to see that. And that representation there is integral in, you know, my success today. So, you know, a lifetime worth of experiences, as well as just, you know, I know how to research because I was in STEM. I mean, I research and I read and I listen and I take notes. Like, I was telling somebody the other day, I got up, I couldn't sleep at 2:30 in the morning, and I had a brain dump. I wrote 5 pages of things that could help clients, things that I could do to bring in business, things that I could write, digital products that I could sell. And I went to sleep at 5:30 and woke up at 8. Now, if I were to have thought to myself, you know, I gotta be to work at 7, you know, I can't brain dump right now. I would have missed all of that goodness that came out of being able to just have the freedom to get up and purge these things out of my brain. And I'm still riding on the coattails of that morning because I came up with so much content. So the freedom of being able to just do something like that as an entrepreneur, like, I mean, I'm sold, you know. And it's not like I'm sleeping the day away or anything like that, but, you know, I can take a nap at 2 o'clock and then wake up and then work until 8, and it's fine. You know, so I appreciate that flexibility, and I'm just like, if I knew that this was the way it was going to be, I would have done this a long time ago.
Yeah, and so that is doing a long time ago is something that you're passionate about. So we've been talking for 2 hours, so I want to have a closing, and we may need to do another episode. We'll come back. I'm sure in a month you'll have done something else amazing. So that will need to.
October is going to be a pretty good month. It's my birthday month, and we got some things shaking, so I'm excited.
Good for you. Yeah. So from my experiences working with students, and like especially women, is that like, who am I, and like a comfortableness with who am I. Like, am I embracing it and comfortable with it, or even like, do I even know who I am? And so, and this is even personal for me, in that, like, when you were saying that, is like, that was a big part of your success, is knowing who you are, being comfortable with it so that you can actually embrace it and articulate it. Can you give us some guidance with that, advice with that?
You know, I launched my blog, and I talk about mindset in the first few blog posts, but it was so important to me, like I said earlier, imposter syndrome, like, that's my right hand man. You know, it always comes no matter what. But I'm confident in the fact that I know my vision, and I know that my mission. And I mean, it's not even like I'm an organization, but like, I know what I want to do. And so when you're struggling to feel or to determine who you are, you know, you have to look around and see what it is that you enjoy. You know, one, if you can't figure out something that you enjoy, figure out what you don't like. You know, I worked in a call center, and I was like, I'm not going to do this ever again because I hate it. But, you know, I didn't know what my next job was going to be, but I know it wasn't going to be that. You know, I can say that I have that skill, but I don't want to do that. Okay, that'll be the first thing. If you can't figure out what you like to do, determine what you don't like to do and shy away from that. if you look around and you don't see anybody you want to be, or you don't see any, or if you don't have anyone that's like encouraging you to do, you got to surround yourself with different people, and just find something random to do, and just surround yourself with people where you can share your story, and like they may know somebody that knows somebody that it was looking for you, and what you have to offer in this life. So I think, not being afraid to try something absolutely random and putting yourself out there just to see what shakes. Like if nothing shakes, that's fine. That's kind of how I manage imposter syndrome. Like, oh my gosh, I'm so scared. I'm so scared. Oh God. Okay, I'm just gonna do it. And if it doesn't work, that's fine. Cool. I'll do something else. But if it works, but what if it works? But what if it works? What's that poem? It's like something, but what if you fly? Like, just gotta do it and see what happens. And, that flexibility, I realized that I'm not at the moment, like, restricted on anything. Like, I can decide tomorrow that I want to go to cosmetology school. And, like, that's possible. Like, I can do that if I want.
Yeah.
The pivot, like, I guess there's kind of a image in like America that you stick with this one thing and that's what you do for the rest of your life, and that's not the case. You do whatever you want to do. Like you can do something completely different one year and go back. It's the world is open for that.
Yeah, it's like a level of open-mindedness. Yeah, flexibility, not being, there's a term that's like elasticity. So found the poem, so I'll read it. There is a freedom waiting for you on the breezes of the sky, and you ask, what if I fall? Oh, but my darling, what if you fly? By Aaron Ham. That's your like kryptonite for imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
It's like a mantra, you may not be able to eradicate your brain, like imposter syndrome, eradicate imposter syndrome from your brain, or your identity, like you said, the right-hand man, but you can counterbalance or
yeah, and being okay with that. Like I have completely, I know that every time that I'm going to do something new, I'm going to be terrified and I'm going to feel like I'm not qualified. But you know what? I can have those feelings and that's okay. We're going to do this anyway. We're going to do it scared. We're going to do it moving. And we're going to see what happens. I came up in a STEM program doing research all the time, doing experiments. Life is a freaking experiment. You got to do all these different things and you just see what happens. So I can't tell myself that I can't do it because I literally spent years doing experiments.
Yeah, and that's the thing too, is quotes about that not all your thoughts and feelings are real or a fact. Like you may like have thoughts, but it doesn't mean they're real. It doesn't mean you need to like believe them.
Right.
They may be coming out of an imposter syndrome or coming out of somebody else's voice, like saying, oh, you're too ambitious from your advisor. Well, we've been talking for over 2 hours, so I really thank you for your time. This is amazing. You're amazing.
Oh, thanks.
I know you have to run off to the New York Times. But I'm glad you think that Trio is more important than the New York Times.
Yes. I always believe in giving back to where I came from, because there's somebody that was like me that's going to need this conversation. So I appreciate you bringing me back for this.
Yes, thank you. We appreciate you, Abriana. You make Trio look good.
No, good.
So, well, anyways, have a good weekend and keep us posted. I will be sure to check in on you on your October events.
TRIO Student Support Services Program and Student Support Services STEM are federally funded college retention and completion programs. These programs focus on academic, personal, and career support for under-resourced undergraduate students. At TRIO SSS and SSS STEM, our goal is helping our students reach their goals. We are currently accepting new students to our program. Apply today. Go to www.ncsu.edu to learn more about student support services at NC State.